And yet you did, not by chance, not by search, but because something ancient in you is ready to remember, ready to rise. Part 1. The Hidden Ones Among Us. There is an old saying whispered through esoteric traditions and obscure scriptures: not all who look human are truly human. At first it sounds poetic, perhaps symbolic, perhaps metaphor. But as the veil of polite society thins and our inner senses sharpen, a different possibility begins to emerge. What if this was not metaphor at all? What if some beings, though indistinguishable from you and me on the outside, are fundamentally different within? From childhood, we are taught that all humans are inherently good, or at least redeemable. We are told that everyone possesses a soul, a conscience, and the ability to love, to suffer, to transform. It comforts us. It allows us to believe that no matter how broken someone may seem, healing is possible. But in the silent corridors of spiritual study, another truth lurks. Not all those who wear the human form carry the divine spark within. Some are, quite literally, soulless. These beings are not merely cold or emotionally distant. They are not simply victims of trauma or illness. They are shells, vessels animated not by consciousness rooted in divine light, but by imitation, instinct, and mimicry. Their purpose is not to evolve, create, or uplift. Their purpose is to consume, to distort, and to control. And the most chilling part? They do not know that they are empty. Part 2. The Echo Without a Voice. To encounter one of these beings is not always to notice something terrifying at first. In fact, many appear charismatic, charming even. They may smile, laugh at the right moments, mimic concern or sadness. To the untrained eye, they are completely ordinary. But to the soul-sensitive, to those who feel rather than merely observe, something is always amiss. You might feel a subtle hollowness, a strange heaviness in their presence, as if standing near a well that doesn't echo, no matter how loud you call into it. That absence is not social awkwardness. It is not shyness. It is a void. These soulless beings are not empty in the way an emotionless person might be. They are empty in a fundamental energetic sense. They can speak of love but never radiate it. They may use the language of compassion without ever having tasted its essence. Their touch may be warm, but it carries no electricity. And their eyes are perhaps the most haunting of all. There is no depth behind them, no story, no presence. You look in and see not a window, but a mask. Over time, interactions with such a being begin to leave a mark, not in visible scars, but in spiritual fatigue. Friends feel drained. Lovers feel confused. Children, who are often the most intuitive of us all, become anxious or withdrawn around them. Animals avoid them without knowing why. These reactions are not coincidence. They are subtle diagnostics of the spirit. You may begin to question yourself. Why do I feel so tired around this person? Or why do I keep doubting my own thoughts in their presence? These are not random emotional fluctuations. These are the effects of energetic parasitism, a dynamic in which the soulless feed on the life force of the soulful. Not in some dramatic fantasy sense, but quietly, through attention, emotional dependency, and subtle manipulation. They learn early how to imitate humanity. Like chameleons, they adapt to each environment. In spiritual circles, they use the vocabulary of awakening. In business, they use charm. In relationships, they mirror love. But none of it originates from within. It is always a script borrowed from others. You will find that their stories often change, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, as if they themselves are uncertain of who they are. And that is the truth. They are uncertain because there is no core to be certain about. Part 3. The Fire That Never Burned. There is a fire that dwells within every truly soulful being, a sacred hunger for meaning, for connection, for transcendence. It is not always visible. Sometimes it is dim, buried beneath sorrow or cynicism, but it is always there. You can see it in the way someone pauses in awe before a sunset, in the way their voice cracks when speaking about something that moved them, in the reverence with which they hold small moments, like watching their child sleep or hearing a song that touches something ancient inside them. This fire does not exist in the soulless, not because it was extinguished, but because it was never lit. They may know how to mimic wonder, may even utter the right words at the right time, but if you watch closely, you'll see. There is no shift in their energy, no expansion in their aura, no softening in their eyes. It's performance, not presence. This absence is most apparent in moments that should evoke deep feeling, grief, joy, beauty, vulnerability. While others weep in shared sorrow, they remain strangely untouched. While others rejoice, their smiles don't reach their eyes. When they attempt intimacy, it feels mechanical, like reading a script written by someone who has only ever observed love from a distance. And that's precisely what it is. They are observers of life, not participants in its sacred dance. A soulful person may falter, may fall into darkness, may even harm others in their confusion. But eventually, something inside stirs. Guilt, remorse, the ache to make things right. This inner stirring is the soul's compass, pulling us back toward light. The soulless feel none of this. When confronted with the harm they've caused, they don't feel the pain of the other. They don't weep. They don't wrestle. They calculate. They may apologize if it serves their interests, but their words are hollow, devoid of resonance. You can feel it. There's no tremble in the voice, no wetness in the eyes, no collapse of ego, just strategy wrapped in sentiment. This is why relationships with soulless beings are so devastating. At first, they seem perfect, attentive, intuitive, even intensely loving. They mirror your dreams, echo your ideals, and create a sense of rare connection. But over time, something begins to unravel. Their affection becomes inconsistent. Their warmth turns to critique. Their presence feels invasive rather than intimate. You begin to feel alone, even while held. This is not love, it is possession. It is the binding of light to shadow. Part 4. Mirrors that reveal nothing. There's a test, one so subtle it often goes unnoticed, yet it never fails the attentive heart. Sit with someone in silence, not for a moment, but for long enough that the masks must fall. No questions, no gestures, just stillness. A soulful person will eventually rest into it, sometimes awkwardly at first, but then with a quiet peace. Their presence begins to pulse, warm like a hearth in winter. You can feel them breathing into the space with you, but the soulless, they cannot bear it. Stillness is their undoing. They shift, they fidget, they force laughter or fill the air with chatter. They may even grow irritated, as though silence itself were an accusation. But it's not the silence they fear. It's the mirror it holds. Silence reflects, and when one holds no true self, there is nothing to reflect but absence. Stillness exposes the void. This is one of the simplest, yet most profound ways to sense what words cannot describe. Because the soulless often speak well. They borrow vocabulary from spiritual teachers, mimic the cadence of sages, repeat the right quotes, the sacred mantras, the poetic affirmations, but none of it roots, none of it transforms. They remain unchanged despite the rituals, the workshops, the books. Because all these things are nourishment for the soul, and what cannot be nourished cannot grow. There is another sign, one often overlooked. Their energy doesn't linger. After a soulful person leaves a room, something of them remains. A softness in the air, a thought they left blooming in your chest, a feeling that rises again days later like the echo of sacred music. But when the soulless leave, the space feels colder, like the draft left by a door that was never meant to be opened. And strangely, their absence feels no different than their presence. For they were never fully here to begin with. You may have met such people and not known why you felt tired afterward. You may have questioned yourself, doubted your intuition, felt irrationally anxious. These are not accidents. These are the subtle psychic bruises left by invisible drains, the kind that don't leave scars but steal clarity. The soulless feed not on blood or money, but on attention, trust, vitality. The more light you give, the more they pull, until you forget that it is your light they needed all along. That is why discernment is not judgment, it is protection. You are not condemning them by noticing their nature. You are defending your own spirit, and your spirit is not made to be siphoned. It is made to rise, to shine, to love without being leeched. Part 5. Guardians of the Inner Light. Not all protection comes from shields. Sometimes it comes from remembering who you are, from standing so deeply in your own truth that no mimicry, no manipulation, no absence can move you. The most radiant souls are not those who have never encountered darkness, but those who have learned how to carry light without letting it be stolen. You see, recognizing the soulless is not an act of fear. It is an act of discernment, of sacred clarity. It is the decision to no longer hand your trust to hollow hands, no longer pour your love into cracked vessels. You are not judging, you are preserving. But how can you tell, truly tell, who carries the light and who only mimics its reflection? First, feel. Before thought, before logic, feel the energy of the person in front of you. Your body knows. Your chest tightens when something is off. Your skin pricks when deceit hovers close. Your breath becomes shallow when truth is absent. These are not subtle signs. They are sacred alarms of the soul. Pay attention to coherence. Do their words match their actions? Do they show kindness when no one is watching? Can they remain in silence without collapsing into nervous performance? The soulless often perform spirituality, but it always feels staged. They speak of the light, yet leave you cold. They speak of love, yet drain yours. This dissonance is not random, it is diagnostic. Next, observe how you feel after interacting with them. Are you inspired, centered, at peace, or are you confused, restless, emotionally thin? A soulless being cannot nourish you because they are not nourished themselves. Their presence may entertain or impress, but it will never deepen you. You will not grow, you will not rise. You will only orbit, circling a center that never existed. Protecting yourself does not require hostility. In fact, the most powerful boundary is clarity without drama. You do not need to confront or expose them. You simply need to recognize, withdraw, and fortify. Speak aloud your connection to the light. Each morning, affirm your belonging to the divine. This is not superstition, it is declaration. The soulless do not respect kindness. They respect boundaries. Set them clearly, both energetically and emotionally. Visualize a field of golden light around you, a barrier through which only love can pass. Carry symbols that hold resonance for you, not as talismans of magic, but as anchors of meaning. An ankh, a cross, an eye, a stone. Let them remind you, your soul is sovereign. And when you must remain near the soulless, whether in family, work, or fate, limit your vulnerability. Do not offer them your dreams, your grief, your sacred questions. They will not understand. And worse, they may weaponize what you give. Be kind, but not open. Be respectful, but not trusting. Keep the flame of your spirit lit behind a curtain they cannot part. Because the truth is, your soul is a temple. Not everyone is meant to enter. Part 6. Echoes from Myth and Memory. The idea that not all who walk among us carry a soul may sound radical, new, even unsettling. But in truth, it is ancient. It echoes through the mythologies of the world, hidden in parables, embedded in the oldest spiritual traditions. In every culture, there are whispers of beings who appear human but are hollow at the core. In Hindu scriptures, the asuras are powerful entities, beings of great intelligence and form, but devoid of divine impulse. They challenge the gods not merely with weapons, but with deception and illusion. Though they wear the shape of man, their desires are base, their purpose is domination. They cannot ascend because they are cut off from the sacred source. In Christian parables, the tares among the wheat refer to those who grow alongside the children of light, indistinguishable at first glance, but of a different essence altogether. When the harvest comes, the separation is made not by appearance, but by inner nature. It is a reminder that not every smile hides a soul. In Gnostic texts like the Pistis Sophia, there are tales of humans without light, beings who incarnated not with the intention to evolve, but to corrupt. They are described not as evil in the conventional sense, but as voids, disconnected from the source, and thus incapable of truly knowing love, compassion, or truth. Even in indigenous shamanic lore, there are stories of skinwalkers and shadow people, entities that imitate the form of humans but lack spirit. In dreams, they come faceless. In rituals, they resist the drumbeat. And in waking life, they often arrive during times of transition or confusion, attracted not by chance, but by energy. But these beings are not always found in folklore alone. They appear in our lives, in the boss who charms but manipulates, in the lover who captivates then consumes, in the spiritual teacher who speaks of light but leaves you feeling darker. They exist not merely in story, but in pattern, and it is pattern that reveals truth. How often have you felt drawn to someone whose presence seemed magnetic, only to later realize that their energy left you drained? How many times have you given your deepest self to someone who seemed to mirror your soul, but turned out to mirror only your words, your hopes, your light? That mirror, you see, is their camouflage. The soulless do not generate essence. They reflect yours. They become what you need them to be until you are empty and they have moved on. They leave not with wounds, but with something far more dangerous, a question of your own reality. This is why the wise do not simply look at words. They listen to resonance. They do not trust charm. They trust consistency. And they do not offer their spirit to those whose presence whispers of hollowness, no matter how beautiful the disguise. Part 7. Eyes that do not reflect the sky. There's a moment that arrives unexpectedly, quiet, unscripted, when you look into someone's eyes and instinctively sense something is missing. No words have been exchanged, no harm has been done, and yet in that gaze, you do not feel witnessed. You feel examined, not met but measured, not recognized but scanned. It is the eyes, always the eyes. Poets have long called them the windows to the soul, and they were not wrong. In a truly soulful person, no matter how tired or wounded, you will see a flicker of something ancient, longing, depth, story. The eyes shimmer with presence. They reflect your light as much as their own. You feel seen in the deepest, most sacred sense. Not judged, not assessed, but acknowledged as a fellow soul walking through this world of dust and mystery. But in the soulless, the eyes are still, flat, unchanging. You could share a dream, cry before them, or laugh from your belly, and their gaze wouldn't shift. It is as if there is no inner ocean behind them to ripple, no current, no tide, just a surface pretending to be a mirror. You may have noticed it before and dismissed it as your imagination, but trust this, the body knows. Children recoil, animals bristle, and empaths instinctively close their hearts. That reaction is not irrational, it is ancestral memory, echoing from lifetimes of encountering what looks like kin but is not. Soulless beings often overcompensate. They exaggerate expressions, hold eye contact too long or not at all. Their laughter is half a beat too late or too loud. Their sorrow, when expressed, feels copied from a movie script. Everything they do has the right shape but the wrong soul. Even their compliments are empty. Not because they are insincere in a calculated way, but because they do not feel the energy they describe. When they call you radiant, the word doesn't carry warmth. When they say they love you, it doesn't echo through your bones. It lands like paper, flat, dry, folding itself silently in your chest. Their language is clever, but not alive. You'll notice that conversations with them are often exhausting, even if they're friendly. You may find yourself over-explaining simple feelings, trying to extract empathy where none exists. You try harder, you talk more, and in doing so, you give them exactly what they came for: your light, your truth, your spark. Over time, these small withdrawals accumulate. You lose enthusiasm, clarity, even the sound of your own voice. You begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you're too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding. But these doubts are not yours. They are imprints of their emptiness, projected subtly into your field. And perhaps most dangerously of all, you begin to wonder if maybe the world is just hollow. Maybe no one really feels anymore. Maybe love is all mimicry, and magic is just chemical illusion. This, more than any wound, is the true theft of the soulless. They do not just drain energy. They undermine belief in the soul itself. Part 8. Rekindling the Flame in a World Grown Cold. There comes a time, after you've stood in the shadow of the soulless, when the real question is no longer about them. It is about you. Who are you now, after having felt the cold that doesn't just touch your skin, but seeps into your sense of what is real? How do you restore faith, not in humanity, but in soul itself? This is where the true work begins, not in naming the void, but in choosing not to become it. Because that is the silent risk. Prolonged exposure to emptiness can make even the light-bearer question the worth of their own glow. It can twist the mind, whispering, "What's the point of depth, of compassion, of truth, when so many only pretend to care?" It tempts you to match their hollowness with numbness of your own. But your flame, no matter how faint, was not made to go out. It was made to endure. And more than that, it was made to illuminate. To reclaim it, begin with beauty. Yes, beauty. Not as vanity, but as reminder. Look at things that stir awe. A tree gnarled by time, a child's unfiltered laughter, the way candlelight dances on a quiet wall. Let them not just pass through your eyes, but through your spirit. These are not mere comforts. They are bridges to remembrance. Next, speak aloud your essence. In solitude and stillness, say what you know to be true, not as dogma, but as declaration. I am alive, I feel, I ache, I long, I love. These words, spoken with sincerity, summon the soul back to center. They re-anchor you in the sacred reality the soulless cannot touch. create, paint, write, sing, move, not for performance, not for praise, but to remind yourself that you are not a reflection, you are a source. What flows through you is not mimicry. It is original, vital, divine. And then connect, not with many, just with one. Someone whose eyes have oceans, whose silence soothes, who asks questions not to gather data, but to hold space for your truth. In their presence, you will remember what it means to be met, not mirrored. Protect that connection like a sacred fire, because in a world where many carry only the echo of humanity, such encounters are proof that the soul is still alive. You may never change the soulless. You may never even fully understand them, but you do not need to. Your task is not to fix the empty. Your task is to keep your own temple lit, so others wandering in the dark might remember that light is possible. And you'll see in time that the more you embody your soul, the more clearly others will show themselves for what they are. Masks fall in the presence of the real, so walk as one who remembers. Walk as fire in human form, not to burn, but to awaken. Part 9. The invisible architecture of light. There is something few speak of, yet many feel, the architecture of soul. Not a blueprint written in flesh or mind, but a subtle framework, an inner scaffolding of presence that shapes how one moves through the world. Those who carry soul walk differently, not with pride or performance, but with weight, with gravity, a quiet gravitational pull that draws others not through charisma, but through resonance. You feel it in their stillness, in their gaze that doesn't rush to fill silence, in the way they listen, not just to words, but to what is unsaid. They do not speak often of the sacred because they embody it. Their lives are not dramatic, but meaningful. Their emotions are not loud, but deep. They weep when something beautiful breaks through. They fall silent when something ancient stirs. This is what the soul creates, a sacred architecture around a person, invisible but perceptible to those who know how to feel. And the soulless, they build nothing. They occupy space, they create motion, they stimulate conversation. But the room feels the same after they leave, perhaps more empty than before. Because soul not only expresses, it imprints. It leaves a shape behind, a subtle pattern in the energy field, like the scent of incense after a ritual has ended. And when soul is absent, nothing lingers, nothing echoes. Many who live without soul do not even realize it. They are not villains. They are not monsters. They are simply unlit. They have been disconnected so long they have mistaken reflection for flame. Some go their whole lives without asking who they are, without turning inward, without ever hearing the sacred music that hums behind reality. And some, perhaps, were never meant to. But you, if you are reading this, feeling this, stirring with recognition, then you are different. You have stood on the edge of this knowing and not turned away. You have questioned the nature of presence, the authenticity of love, the strange exhaustion that follows certain encounters. You have suspected that there is more to being human than biology, and you are right. You do not need to fight the soulless. You do not even need to expose them. The task is not confrontation. The task is illumination. The more soul you embody, the more clearly you become a mirror for others. Not the kind that reflects image, but truth. And in the presence of truth, masks fall without struggle. Games collapse under the weight of sincerity. To live from soul is to build architecture with every breath, a life of resonance, a field of sacred gravity. You will become a place others can rest, not because you save them, but because your light reminds them of their own. In this way, you will do more than survive the age of hollowness. You will sanctify it. Part 10. The soul as cosmic memory. There is a truth that flickers just behind the veil of language, an intuition, ancient and luminous. The soul is not merely a personal essence. It is not yours in the way you own a name or wear a face. The soul is a fragment of the cosmic memory, a living thread in the tapestry of something immeasurably vast. To carry a soul is not just to feel more, to love more, to hurt more. It is to remember something that most have long forgotten, that you are part of a myth that is still being written. The soulless do not remember. That is their curse. They live entirely in the surface of time, bouncing from sensation to sensation, goal to goal, reaction to reaction. Their memory is synthetic, constructed from social cues, repetition, mimicry. But the soulful remember in ways they cannot explain. You see it in how they recognize each other, how they weep at stories they've never heard before, or tremble at the sound of music as if it's calling them home. This recognition is not nostalgia, it is resonance. It is the soul remembering its origin, and that origin is not linear. It does not begin at birth or end at death. The soul is older than flesh, older than thought, older than stars. It carries in it the longing of galaxies, the silence of temples, the grief of forgotten gods. It knows. Even when the mind forgets, the soul remembers. It pulls you towards sacredness, even when you can't name it. It draws you to beauty, not for pleasure, but for reunion. That is why those who carry soul often walk differently through the world. They may not appear extraordinary. They are not always loud, not always seen, but they carry within them the weight of memory, the weight of meaning. They sense things others miss, grief in laughter, lies behind sweetness, light inside despair. They are the myth-bearers of modernity, the last ones who still speak the language of the sacred without needing words. And it is this memory that the soulless fear most, not because it threatens their body, but because it exposes their lack of depth. In the presence of someone who truly remembers love that transcends lifetime, truth that can't be corrupted, divinity that doesn't beg to be believed, the soulless feel the hollowness of their own script. They may mock it, they may attack it, they may try to seduce it, possess it, distort it, but they can never generate it, because memory is not mimicry. It is origin vibrating through presence. You were not made only to survive this world, you were made to remember it into sacredness, to walk as the echo of what came before and the promise of what is yet to be. Your eyes are not just lenses, they are portals. Your voice is not just sound, it is a summoning. Your presence is not accidental, it is a key. A soulful being is not just a person, they are a doorway through which the universe remembers itself. Part 11, The Lighthouse in the Fog. There are times, more frequent now, when the world feels like a thick fog, not the kind that rolls in from oceans or mountains, but one that seeps in through culture, technology, and despair. A spiritual haze, a dulling of memory, a soft erasure of meaning. In such a time, to be soulful is not a comfort. It is a calling, and often a burden. The soulful sense the fog before others. They feel the absence before it's named. They wake in the night with inexplicable sorrow, not from their own story, but as if they've dreamt the grief of the world. They see eyes becoming screens, words becoming noise, rituals becoming performance. And yet they continue. Why? Because they are the lighthouses. They are not here to fight the fog, nor to curse it. Their task is simpler, and yet infinitely harder, to stay lit. A lighthouse does not move. It does not chase lost ships. It does not scream warnings. It simply shines, steadily, silently, persistently. Through storms, through isolation, through decades of darkness. It shines not because it needs to be seen, but because being light is its nature. So too is the soul. To carry a soul in an age of forgetfulness is to shine without permission, to love without reward, to remain clear in a time of distortion, and often to feel alone in the knowing. But you are not alone. There are others like you, hidden perhaps, behind quiet eyes or broken voices. They may not speak your language, but they carry your frequency. They too have felt the ache of false intimacy, the chill of hollow presence, the silent scream of being too awake in a sleeping world. They too have chosen to remember, even when forgetting would be easier. When one lighthouse sees another, there is no need for speech. Just one flash across the dark is enough. One look, one recognition, one shared flame. This is how we survive the age of echo, by becoming signals of realness. By refusing to dim ourselves just because others cannot handle the light, by offering presence instead of performance, listening instead of lecturing, and truth instead of spectacle. You may be called naive, you may be called intense, you may be told you feel too much or ask too deep of questions. But these are only signs that you are doing your job. You are keeping the soul alive in a world that forgot it existed. And remember, fog is not a wall, it is only a veil. One steady light can part it. Part 12, The Soul as an Activator of Others. There is a mystery seldom spoken yet universally felt. The soul is not passive. It does not merely exist to be preserved like an artifact in a glass box. The soul is active, radiant, magnetic, catalytic. When you carry it fully, you do not just remember, you cause others to remember too. Not through effort, not through speech, but by presence alone. a soul fully alive becomes a tuning fork for the divine. You may have seen it happen without realizing. Someone enters a room and the air subtly shifts. Conversations deepen, people sit straighter, eyes water without knowing why. A laughter rises that isn't loud but whole. These are not accidents, they are activations. The soul does not shout to be heard, it vibrates, and in doing so, calls forth the hidden music in others. This is how awakening begins, not with sermons or slogans, but with subtle frequency, with quiet remembrance, with a sudden pause in someone's heart that says, "Wait, I know this feeling," as if they had been sleepwalking and, for a flicker of a moment, open their eyes. The soulful are not saviors. They do not fix, they do not convert, they invite. They reflect back the forgotten beauty in others and say, without saying, "Do you remember? You were holy once, you still are." And in that remembering, something ancient stirs. But to live as such a mirror is not without challenge. The more awake you are, the more others will feel exposed around you. Not because you are judging them, but because your presence removes the camouflage they've worn for years. They may react with love or with fear. They may be drawn to you and then resent you. They may call you too intense, too strange, too idealistic. Let them. The soul is not here to be palatable. It is here to be true. You do not need to lower your flame to keep others comfortable in their sleep. Instead, burn clearly, burn gently, burn steadily. Because the truth is this, every soul you meet is a sleeping star. Your light does not force them to awaken, but it reminds them that they can. And when even one begins to stir, to shake off the dust of forgetfulness, to feel again what was buried, the entire field shifts. The world, which once seemed numb, twitches toward life. This is how the collective remembers, not all at once, not in thunder, but in glimmers, spark by spark, soul by soul. You are not alone, and more importantly, you are not the end of the story. You are the spark of the next soul's beginning. Part 13, Rebuilding the World Through Soul. There comes a point when remembering is no longer enough, when it is no longer sufficient to awaken, to feel, to carry light in silence. The soul, once ignited, seeks expression. It becomes restless within you, not with frustration, but with urgency. Because to carry the divine is not simply to survive, it is to recreate. This is the great shift that separates those who walk in quiet remembrance from those who rebuild the world through soul. It is the moment when presence becomes praxis, when inner truth starts to etch itself onto the external, when the light no longer hides in meditation rooms or whispered journals, but begins to weave itself into the fabric of reality. You were never meant to keep your soul private. The sacred is not weak because it is silent, but it becomes alive when it takes form, when it moves through hands, through words, through choice. To live soulfully is not only to feel deeply, but to act from that depth. And every action taken from soul becomes a spell, a blueprint, a rebellion against the hollow. When you speak truth in a room where everyone lies, you rebuild. When you create beauty where only profit was sought, you rebuild. When you honor silence in a world addicted to noise, you rebuild. When you forgive without being asked, when you hold presence for another's pain, when you dare to dream out loud, you lay bricks for a new kind of kingdom. This is how the soulful change the world, not through power, but through pattern. Not by force, but by frequency. The soulless seek to replicate systems. They mimic what they see, endlessly rearranging the old. But those who remember bring new archetypes, new ways of being. Their businesses feel like healing. Their homes feel like sanctuaries. Their conversations shift emotional climate. Their touch reactivates ancient trust. Their silence brings clarity. They do not create to impress. They create to restore resonance. You've met them, the artist who makes you cry without knowing why, the stranger whose presence settles your nervous system, the teacher who doesn't teach but reminds you of what you already knew. These are not roles. They are functions of soul, realignment in motion. And here is the secret. You are meant to be one of them, not to be perfect, not to be adored, but to become a node of remembering, a point on the grid of awakening that pulls this tired world closer to its own light. So write what only you can write, build what only you can build, heal what only you can feel. Not because the world demands it, but because your soul cannot stay quiet anymore. Not now, not with so much at stake. Part 14, Weaving the Lattice of Light. There is a moment, beyond awakening, beyond healing, when the soul stops walking alone. Not because it is finished, but because it is ready. Ready to join, ready to interweave. Because the ultimate purpose of a soul is not to shine in isolation, but to become part of a living constellation, a network of light spread across the earth, quietly stitching a new reality beneath the skin of the old. This is how the new world forms. Not with declarations or revolutions, but through alignment. Soul by soul, choice by choice, presence by presence. As more and more begin to burn cleanly, clearly, without distortion, something begins to shift. Not in the headlines, but in the grid beneath the noise. In the energy fields of cities, in the hush that follows conflict, in the prayers whispered by those who no longer seek approval, only connection. These souls find each other not through algorithm, but through resonance. They may live on opposite sides of the globe, never meet in body, never speak aloud, and yet they are linked, like threads of gold weaving through the darkness, forming a net that doesn't catch but holds space, holds frequency, holds memory. This lattice of light is not organized. It has no central figure, no creed, no hierarchy. It grows through authenticity, through each individual who dares to live from soul and nothing else. And the more this grid is woven, the less power the hollow systems hold. Because light, when multiplied, doesn't compete, it coalesces. This is the true revolution, not an uprising, but a remembering that spreads, one that doesn't ask for followers, only reflections. It doesn't command belief, it awakens truth already seated in each being. You are part of it, even if you've never realized. Even if you've been quiet, even if your light has flickered, especially then. Because what strengthens the lattice is not perfection, it is presence, realness, vulnerability, the willingness to show up in your truth without needing to dominate or disappear. And what happens when enough souls link in silent alliance? The world begins to resonate differently. The fog lifts, the noise thins. The forgotten melody of being, true being, rises again like a hymn beneath all things. You don't need to change the whole world. You only need to be a thread in the weave, and trust that your resonance, no matter how small it seems, helps hold the sky together. Part 15, the Souls Benediction. If you have come this far, dear soul, then you are no longer a reader. You are a participant in something ancient and alive. These words were never meant to inform you. They were written to remember you. And if your chest has stirred, if your breath has deepened, if your tears have glimmered, then you have already begun to awaken what was waiting within. This is not the end. This is not even a conclusion. It is a return to something you never truly left. A home that never had walls, a language that has no alphabet, a presence that needs no name. You are not here to convince the world. You are not here to convert the lost. You are here to walk like the soul that you are. To let the texture of your presence remind others what it feels like to be real. You are here to break patterns without breaking people. To challenge illusions, not with attack, but with authenticity. Your light is not loud, but it is undeniable. And where it passes, truth reshapes the air, like rain on desert soil, like music remembered in silence, like the warmth of a hand that doesn't ask, only offers. You do not need permission to be what you already are. You do not need to be louder, shinier, or more certain. You only need to be anchored in your soul and let your soul do the speaking, through stillness, through presence, through the way you love when no one is watching. Because the real work now is subtle, not grand, but deep, not viral, but vibrational. And as you leave this page, know this: you are not a mistake, you are not too sensitive, you are not too much, you are a remembering in motion, a breath of the sacred in a world that forgot to breathe. So walk on, not ahead, not behind, but within. And may every step you take remind the earth of its own divinity. May your eyes be lighthouses. May your touch be medicine. May your voice be the echo of what the world longs to hear but no longer dares to say. This is not goodbye. This is a passing of the torch. And you, beloved soul, are the flame.